Fly me to the moon, let me play among the stars.
Up next on Relevant Radio, the Lydia LoCoco Show, Real Faith, Real Life, from the studio at St. Camillus. It's brought to you by Kelman Restoration. Now, here's Lydia.
Welcome. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Lydia LoCoco, and I am so happy to introduce you to a very special guest and to our topic today, which is the education of young women. In case you haven't noticed, girls' school grads have an edge. I can lay out for you the case for single-sex schools, that 1990s National Study of Secondary Schools and Colleges. I can quote you chapter and verse on why I think educating young women and single-sex schools is the way to go. If you know my kids, if you know who I am at all, you know that I am passionate about the evangelical mission that is Catholic education. I think it is so important for us in these days of pressure on issues like religious liberty to really stand out and not retreat, but really to engage culture and to stand as a beacon and a flagship for our duty and our joy that is Catholic education. But my argument is more on a personal level, because I know that you want to raise women of courage. You want to raise women of interior fortitude. You certainly want to raise women who are empowered because they know they're a child of God. And it is from that they draw their interior dignity. And they reach out to other people in every aspect of culture. And they see the dignity in each and every person they come in contact with, no matter who they are, where they come from, no matter their job or social status. Today's guest, amazingly enough, has written a book entitled Valiant Women. His book refers not only to the students, but to the women religious and the women lay teachers who painstakingly dedicate their lives to giving young women a voice and a place, and to the higher purpose of advancing this evangelical mission of the church that is Catholic education. Come hear the story of Divine Savior, Holy Angels. When we come back, I'm going to introduce you to the man that wrote the book, Frank Miller. I'm Lydia LoCoco. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Are you a healthcare professional in need of a little spark this Lent to rekindle the gift of your vocation? Most of us could use a little boost at this time of year. St. Camillus has just the solution. St. Camillus and the Milwaukee Guild of the Catholic Medical Association will be offering a half-day Lenten spiritual retreat for all healthcare workers on Saturday, March 25th. This half-day spiritual retreat will be held at San Camillo on West Blue Mound Road in Wauwatosa. This half-day retreat will include insightful talks, prayer, reflection, and sharing. A continental breakfast and lunch will both be provided. The cost is only $10. Yes, just $10 for the whole package. Please call 414-259-6310 for more information or to reserve a spot. That number again is 414-259-6310.
You are listening to the Lydia LoCoco Show. It's Real Faith, it's Real Life on Relevant Radio.
Welcome back, and thanks for coming back after that commercial break. I am here, as I gave you a little sneak, with Frank Miller. Frank is the Corporate and Foundations Relations Officer, how's that for a title, at Divine Savior, Holy Angels. And that's his part-time job. But his real job, he didn't realize, is you're now a full-fledged author. Welcome, Frank. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
I am sitting holding in my hands, actually for the first time, I get to see it up close and personal, Valiant Women, the first 125 years of Divine Savior's Holy Angels High School. It is, it's a beautiful book. And Frank, I was telling you before we got started, I'll show my cards now. Not that I don't think you're a wonderful author, but what a story you have.
It's a great story, and that's one of the reasons when the idea came up about a year and a half ago of should we do a history, and my hand shot up in the air right away. I wanted to do this. I wanted to do it because the school has a one-of-a-kind story, really, and I've got personal attachments to it as well through my mom, who taught at Holy Angels from 1963 to 1968.
What did she teach? I'm just curious.
She taught English.
Oh, English at an all-girls school. That's the jewel in the crown, right?
It is, and I run into her students every once in a while, and some of them say, do you have a Southern accent like your mom did?
Oh, cute.
And others will talk about stories that where she helped him with something.
Sure.
And it's good to run into those stories.
And I don't know whether to start with the micro or the macro. Let's start with the macro. The macro story here is the evangelical mission that is Catholic education, because it's a mission of the church. And I'm just unabashedly in favor of Catholic education because I think it is the best way, and I think it's been proven since we've kind of dropped one or two generations, right?
Yes.
It is one of the best ways to really communicate to the whole world what it means to take this mission and go out and engage culture, right?
Absolutely. The macro story, as you call it, is what we call the amazing story, and we're sort of the inspiring story inside that amazing story. But people don't learn today what Catholic education has meant to the United States. There was a whole generation of nuns who came over from Europe during the 19th century. 130,000 sisters who came over here mainly.
We're going to say it again. 125 or 130,000 women
who came from Europe to America.
Young.
We were the mission.
We were the mission.
And they came over, and many of them started schools. And the school system they built up, the Catholic school system that stretched across the country, eventually, by 1960, was serving about 5 million kids in 5,000 schools across the country or more. That was about 1 out of every 8 children in the United States. It was the largest private school system in the world. And you read about the European migration in history books today, but you don't read about the huge number of nuns who were part of that tide that landed on our shores and came here to set up schools, starting in New York and just spreading westward. And that's how the two orders who set up Divine Savior and Holy Angels got here. They were part of that movement.
So the two orders are the Sisters of the Divine Savior and then the BVMs, right?
The BVMs, Sisters of Charity of the Blessed Virgin Mary, or BVMs as we all knew them.
Lovingly call them, right?
Yes.
Yeah, they came here and, looking back, and there's been much work done on this now that we really are valuing women and their work. There's been a lot of academic work done on, it was also one of the best vehicles for taking a lower class immigrant population in America and lifting them through education to that middle class. I mean, it was the best conduit. I mean, if you came in and you're poor and you don't speak the language, you got into a Catholic school, and I can tell you as the daughter, of a widowed mother who every penny went to get you into that Catholic school because they knew that was your best chance to write the American dream. Really?
Yeah, the Catholic Church in the city during the late 1800s and early 1900s was a very, very important institution, not just because of the religious activities that were centered there, but because of the education and social activities as well.
Right?
It was an anchor for a community. And, there's just millions of kids across the country who have the same experience that you and I did, that we went to a Catholic school. We were taught by nuns. They did an exceptionally good job, and we're the beneficiaries of what they did.
And people think we're crazy if you get me on the topic. I mean, people literally have to kind of edge me out of the room because my producer's laughing because you just had such a singularly strong and positive experience. First of all, on the one hand, the women were young, far away from home. They probably didn't get home very often. On the other hand, a lot of them spent their summers in study. So some of the sisters, and especially particular orders, I know the Sisters of St. Joseph of Carondelet and orders like that, were such intellectual orders, had such well-educated women.
And that was true of both of the orders involved with these two schools. The BVMs became known as the Jesuit sisters because they were so devoted to learning.
Degree after degree.
They were one of the first to really pursue teacher education. They, in fact, had the Catholic University of America open up a branch in Dubuque, Iowa, simply to train the sisters who were members. They also went to Marquette. They went to University of Chicago. They were among the first to study some of the theories of John Dewey and understand what experiential learning really meant. And the Salvatorians, they were teaching young women to be nurses and teachers, so it was a very rigorous education. They learned how to teach from the School Sisters of St. Francis, from the teachers at Marquette University, but they put a really high premium on learning what to do in a classroom so that what you did had a big impact.
And, you have to put things in context, and you and I are both from the South. In decades gone by, and more than that, the secular culture was giving one particular message to young women. Mm-hmm. When you walk through those doors and you were taught by a woman faculty, mm-hmm. or the head of your school was a woman, women addressed you, anybody in leadership was a woman, that subconsciously or consciously really communicated a very different message. Also, I always say that if you weren't particularly wealthy or beautiful or able to compete for young men's affections in a classroom, for the poor kid, for the kid mm-hmm. not from the nice neighborhood, it's a level playing field. You could compete, and so I could be president of the senior class. We all wore a uniform. Nobody knew who the rich kid was, mm-hmm. right?
Right.
And we weren't waiting for the boy to come up and take the lead. So I was so happy to be able to invite you. I'm so thrilled that you did this book because with as much as Ellen Bartel, to whom we owe, I don't want to speak of hers in the past already, but so much, as much as you've all done, there's nothing really like this, is there? Are you kind of the first one to... is there another book of the history of Divine Savior, Holy Angels that I don't know about?
No, there's histories of Divine Savior that were not published, that were written by students. There is a history of Holy Angels that was written by one of the sisters, but they're very short and they're very cursory. We wanted to do something that really dug in and showed what made this school such a special school.
And really a flagship, really a beacon, because many all-women's, young girls' schools are gone.
Right.
In the bad times of, I would say, the 80s and early 90s, when the boys' schools kind of crumbled and went co-ed for lack of, right? I remember I always say my husband, who's loves Marquette High, my sons went there, but I remember the letter that came home, would you support Marquette High if it went co-ed? That was not that long ago, right?
No, it was not. That was, we can see what happens when you do that just by looking at what happened to St. Mary's, which was an excellent school on the mm-hmm. south side. Mm-hmm. When Thomas More opened up and went co-ed nearby, that for all practical purposes was the end of St. Mary's. There were other problems, but that was the clincher.
I would have to say, though, that I don't know that would happen anymore at Divine Savior Holy Angels. It's academically so superior.
Yes.
And its mission is so crystal clear mm-hmm. that I honestly, I think in many ways, and I say this as a graduate, an alum of a school that did close after 150 years because the boys' school went co-ed, I don't think that would have, I think it was for many years, the girls' school were very lovely places to sing young ladies, but they were a little weaker, in fairness. And certainly those days are gone. Those days are absolutely gone.
Yeah, and the tradition for both Divine Savior and Holy Angels has been pretty rigorous from the start. Holy Angels, for instance...
Not to mention a pretty strong alumni base.
The alumni base is very, very important to the success of the school. But we've had, starting in 1930, we've had a really rigorous science curriculum at Holy Angels. There were, at that time, 6 courses offered, which was highly unusual for a girls' school. Today, there's 31 science and math courses offered. So I was amazed when I was doing research for this book. I went to Marquette High, and I remember what our science requirement was. And at the time that I was there, and I'm looking at the science requirements at DS and HA, they're taking 2 and 3 more courses than I was taking at Marquette High. And they were tough courses.
I always tell the stories to my girls, and I show them my yearbook because they can't believe it. Because although I am older, I'm not 102, that we had no sports of any kind. And when they don't believe me, I show them my yearbook. I said, I was in Shreveport, Louisiana, in the South. It was still the 70s, and there weren't, what is it, Title IX, and there were no sports at all. There was a huge home ec department, but there was no sports offered.
Yeah, the sports started quite early at DS. They were at Holy Angels as well, but DS really set the sports tradition that is so alive today at Divine Savior Holy Angels.
Amazingly alive. So tell me why the 125th anniversary, and give me the word for that, is?
Quasquicentennial. There, can we not say it again?
No, come on, I think it's great. Quasquicentennial. Look at me. It's a new word. Why is 125th anniversary even important to acknowledge? And I mean that sincerely. Why?
I think that periodically organizations, just like individuals, need these points at which they can check their progress, check where they are and how they got there. I think history is, ironically, not a way of just looking at the past, but also a way of looking ahead. If you do a history, it helps you understand what trajectory you're on and how you want to get to the next few steps ahead of you. History helps you understand how to look ahead. And that's the important part of doing it at this particular time. With 125 years, particularly the 125 years that we had of two founding schools coming together in 1970 to form one school.
And how, I mean, I don't want to be negative, but how disheartened and angry must some of those alumni been at the time, right?
It was very difficult.
And, I mean, you probably could have flipped a coin and said, this might work, this might not work.
It was, the people who decided to do this, first of all, were parents. And the parents led the charge on this.
And maybe that's why.
And they wanted to make sure that Milwaukee always had a very, very strong girls' school for them to send their daughters to.
And we kind of go back up to that macro level of the mission, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, they wanted Catholic education, but they wanted Catholic education for young women.
And all of these parents who were involved, and it was people such as Joe Tierney and Leonard Van Hecke, who was a parent at Holy Angels, Vince Shealy, who was a parent at Divine Savior. These are the guys that got together and said, look, we're going to lose both these schools if we don't do something. And within a month, they had talked both schools into working out this affiliation agreement that they did. But then
I saw, reading up in your book a little, the first year was not easy.
First year was tough.
Bad year? You kind of, I mean...
It was easy to bring the faculty together. 11 people came over from Holy Angels to the new school. It was easy to bring the parental advisory board together because they blended people from HA and DS. You know, but the students had a long history of a rivalry between them. And just, you know, in December of 1969, DS and HA had a volleyball game. And both schools were plastered with signs. At DS, it was flatten HA, and at Holy Angels, it was mess with DS. And it was a rowdy, loud, cantankerous game. DS just cleaned up, by the way. But 3 months later, they're saying, we're going to be sisters together in the same school, and everything's going to be fine.
Oops.
It took a couple of years to work that out.
If I were someone not acquainted with the history of Holy Angels and Divine Savior, do a little thumbnail sketch of how different they were. So one's an urban school, one's a suburban school. Why don't you tell the difference?
Well, they were alike in many ways. If you look at the curriculum, they were pretty much identical. They had identical missions. They both believed strongly in co-curricular activities. But they had different, some people like to say styles. I like to say personalities. You know, HA was very much a college prep school, Holy Angels. And they were downtown.
Located where?
On 12th and Kilburn.
Got it.
So very close to Marquette University, and that had been part of the plan from the beginning to be close to the major Catholic university in town. So they're drawing students from all over, but predominantly the east side, the near west side, and deeply into the south side. During the 50s, when DS started, you know, they opened that building that they're in now.
Wait, Holy Angels started when?
In 1892.
1892. And Divine Savior started in the 50s.
Divine Savior moved into its current building in 1951. They began accepting lay students in 1948 at their former mother house. But it was a much more spirited school. The faculty were young. They were demanding, but as so many students at the time said, they were just fun to hang around with. And they didn't have the sort of the gravitas.
I was going to say the august reputation, right?
Right.
Okay.
So they're much more casual about things. At Holy Angels, if you said, I want to be in the play, the sisters would say, this is a huge responsibility. You need to be outstanding because that's what we do here. That's our tradition.
Right.
If you were at Divine Savior and you said, I want to be in the play, the sister would say, go for it. Do the best you can. We'll see how it works out. So there was a very different approach. That filtered down into the students. When the faculty got together, they actually worked well together because they spent the summer before the affiliation planning how to bridge these two curricula that they had.
Would the alumni say one school won out over the other?
Some do. Some say that, but most, if you I've looked at that pretty closely because that's a common conception. And if you look, at sort of the ultimate endorsement, which is, do you support your school? We've got very strong support from the HA alums, very strong support from the Divine Savior alums, and strong support from the DSHA alums as well.
Well, my favorite point in every year is, handing out, calling those grandmothers and then the daughter and then now the granddaughter. And it's that long line that you belong to something bigger than yourself, that you belong to something that's going to be here after you're not. And that it does belong to the larger story of the big mission of the church, but not an inward church, an outward church,
right?
That goes out and educates everyone.
Exactly.
And that is kind of in this age of religious liberties and arguments, really stands as a beacon and an example for how well it can be done, because you certainly have a wide range of backgrounds, races, religions. I mean, Divine Savior Holy Angels educates everyone, right? Is that true? It
is. About 85% of our students are Catholic. But 26% of our students are young girls of color. 36% are there only because they were able to receive financial aid enabling them to be there. And about 100 of them are there with the help of school choice, yes. But I think, when the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops came out with their school guidelines in 2012, that was very clarifying. And there was a task force that formed at DSHA that looked at those. And they didn't have to do a lot of work to the curriculum, but they did realign. And the main thing that they did was bring into much better alignment what students were learning in the classroom and what they were doing through community service projects and service efforts out in the field. As one religion teacher called it, we brought together the information and the formation. And now those two things are very closely linked. And the trigger for doing that really was the issuance of the new guidelines, which when everybody read them just thought, this makes a lot of sense and it makes it real clear that we're on the right track. We just have to take a few steps further down the road.
I know the strategic plan that I'm going to refer to now is probably old, but that strategic plan that you came out with, number one was what? Catholic identity.
Yes.
Right? Which just to align that mission, and to get, and that's from everything from the teachers to the parents. I mean, it wasn't in any kind of stifling negative way. It was such a, this is why we're here. Again, telling that story. Yeah. You do the addition on, and you walk down and you just walk down all those pictures. I mean, people who don't even know Divine Savior Holy Angels should come in just for the history of it as a part, and also part of the story of Milwaukee too.
Yeah, you can't help but be part of the larger community that you're in. And obviously you want to have a good effect on it, but it affects you as well. And that's been part of both Holy Angels and Divine Savior's growth and their affiliation.
I'd love, do you have any standout stories? I'm just curious. Were there any larger than life, Mother Superiors or any particular women that really gave a significantly long time of service or anything like that, as you were going through the booklet? And I saw that one little fact is Ellen Bartell, I did not know, is technically the first president
Yes.
I did not know that.
And that happened in 1998 when the Salvatorian sister said, we need to make this transfer complete.
So
and
not
they
just
moved
an administrator, right?
They moved control of the school to a lay board of directors. And as part of that, they created the offices of president and principal, and they were shared for so many years by Ellen and Sister Virginia Honish.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So that was a big step, and it was sort of the final step in putting the school under lay control.
And that's another transition that could have gone, really bumpy.
Could have gone south so easily.
Could have gone south so easily, but you had these leaders who had a steady hand, and it transitioned very well.
Yeah. I think, one of the standout leaders for me in the history of the school was the sister who became principal of Holy Angels in 1930. Her name was Sister Mary Immaculate. And Sister Mary Immaculate is, in my mind, the person who said, these girls here are going to learn how to achieve. The curriculum got pretty stiff, and then she opened up a series of co-curricular activities, and her words were, this is where the girls will learn how to lead and how to exercise their own judgment and create their own situations.
So like co-curricular, you mean?
I mean the Ariel newspaper, student newspaper. In the second year that it existed, it was named one of the top student newspapers in the nation by the Catholic Student Press Association. She started an orchestra that broadcast every Friday night on WTMJ radio.
Come on.
Seriously. She started the Latari Players, which started that whole series of musical plays for which Holy Angels became so well known. So here was a woman that just said, this is what we're going to do to make our girls achievers.
We're not going to just teach them homework.
We know we're building a future for them and a tradition for the school. And that tradition carried on through. Same thing was happening at DS when they opened. And the combination of the two has carried the school a long, long way.
Well, you can tell that I could sit here all day and talk to you about this because it's my very favorite subject, and I endure much ridicule because of that. But my last question, where did you get such a great and perfect name for the book?
Well, to tell you the truth, I'd read this passage. I've heard it at weddings, the valiant women passage. It's in the book of Proverbs.
31?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm going through old yearbooks at Divine Savior, 1952, the second year that it's in its new building. And here's the yearbook dedicated to the valiant women of Divine Savior. And I just thought, this is stunning that that's the way they were thinking then. And I thought, that's the perfect title. I have just,
it is the perfect title. I'm so grateful for you for coming by, Frank. It's so encapsulate. I've really given a lot of thought to that word, what we want of our young women. We want them to be valiant. It somehow carries with it the idea of going outward.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And courage.
You can't be valiant alone.
And courage and strength, and you can't be valiant alone. So you're not a hot dog. It's not like for the superstar. It's women together, and it brings with it that voice that we want women to have. So this is gonna go on, and will be part of the school forever. So you too have put your little foundational brick in the Divine Savior Holy Angel wall. So congratulations.
Thanks very much.
I loved having you here, and we are going to cut for a commercial, and we will be right back. This is Lydia from the Lydia LoCoco Show, and the LoCoco home is getting a major facelift thanks to the award-winning remodeling team at Kelman Restoration. Kelman workers are tearing down walls, ripping up floors, and fixing problems I didn't even know I had. They pay attention to every detail because they know that this is more than a job. This is a home. Don't give your home remodel a second thought. Call Kelman at 414-774-3799. Keep up on my home remodel project at Facebook and on Kelman.com. That's KELMANN.com.
We're back with the Lydia LoCoco Show. It's real faith and real life from our studio at St. Camillus.
Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll be back next Friday, Saturday, and Sunday with the Lydia LoCoco Show. Right now, we are going to introduce Archbishop Jerome Listecki with Living Our Faith. I'm Lydia LoCoco. God bless your day.
You've been listening to the Lydia LoCoco Show, real faith and real life on Relevant Radio. Tune in next Friday morning at 9 for more real talk from our studio at St. Camillus. And for more information about this show, visit LydiaLoCoco.com.